Sonic has had plenty of racing games over the years, but none have really stood out to me as much as Sonic Riders. This game had so much going on, like a huge cast of original characters, scenery that really reminded me of Sonic Adventure 2, some really well and not so well animated cutscenes, and some really intuitive gameplay sprinkled across it all. Sonic Riders had 3 games, the first obviously being called Sonic Riders, the sequel, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, and lastly, Sonic Free Riders, but we don't talk about that last one. I recently played through the first Sonic Riders game to see if it holds up the dear nostalgia I have, and honestly, it was an experience. I just wanted to quickly mention that for some reason OBS decided to chop off the bottom part of my recording, so if you notice a perspective change, then that's all that really happened. But without further ado, let's go over what Sonic Riders is all about. Sonic Riders, first and foremost, is a racing game much like Mario Kart or Kirby Air Ride, as it has the exact same formula of race against your opponents in a crazy course and use power-ups and shortcuts to win. The game starts off with a couple of characters unlocked for the free play mode if you just want to jump into the game, or there's also the story mode, which is where the real meat of the game is. And the story mode in this game, much like the other Sonic games, has multiple stories that converge at the same endpoint. Sonic Riders options are the heroes and the villains, or more specifically, the heroes and Babylon. For now, I'm going to focus on the hero story just because it's the first one you'll play. The story kicks off with this really nicely animated cutscene of the Sonic team walking around in this new city landscape, with Tails trying to track some sort of signal, and they don't really explain what he's looking for. When suddenly these 3 riders burst out of nowhere, and then Tails shouts,
Sonic! The emerald's over there!
The crew then chases after them, and Knuckles knocks one to the ground, and then Sonic steals his board and starts chasing after their leader. And sure enough, Sonic gets knocked to the ground and gets mocked, and as he does.
So, you're supposed to be the fastest thing alive?
And then suddenly it's daytime in the city in the next scene, and Sonic and friends learn of Eggman's newest scheme.
X-World Grand Prix, a tournament to see who's the best of the best with extreme gear.
A grand race tournament that he's putting together, which of course includes the mysterious crew seen before, consisting of Storm, Wave, and Jet. For some context, these 3 are known as the Babylon Rogues. They're the last living members of an ancient society that was struck down by God by asking for too much or something along those lines. Of course, Sonic wants to prove he's the fastest, so for
A simple entry fee of 1 Chaos Emerald.
the team is off to the race. Wait, they're willingly handing over a Chaos Emerald for a race entry fee? Well, that's plot, I guess. The first race in the story is actually a pretty forgiving learning stage, in the case that you only need to place in the top 3 in order to progress to the next race. However, the game explains nothing to the player, and just kind of drops you in expecting you to have every niche mechanic fully understood right out the gate. Almost like a mother bird dropping its babies to teach them how to fly, but in this case, the babies don't know what flying is and just smack the concrete face first. Sonic Riders revolved around 3 classes of characters. You had speed characters that could grind on rails, flight characters that could fly through hoops for a shortcut, and power characters that could smash obstacles like cars and enemies right out of the way. But as I mentioned before, none of this is ever explained to you, and you're just left to experiment and learn. Or you could be like me when I was younger and just brute force your way through the entire game until you finally win. The other important thing the game doesn't care to share is that hitting jumps at specific points on a ramp can lead you to secret shortcuts and paths that almost every course has. Other than that, the game is pretty straightforward racing. Getting back to the story now. After winning the first race, the heroes are now walking to what could possibly be the next race, when suddenly Wave shows up just to mock the craftsmanship of the board Tails built, and then insults the 3 of them afterwards. Oh yeah, and she also places a freaking bomb on Sonic's board, and nobody notices. The second race then commences, and you get to play as Tails for this one. And it's honestly a nice little change-up, and Tails actually gets the advantage on this course because of his access to the flying paths. The next 2 races are kicked off by side cutscenes that hold no big importance whatsoever, with the 3rd race starting by Knuckles running into Storm and they argue until the race starts. Then the 4th race commences after Sonic does some sick tricks in the jungle, and for some reason you're back in control of Tails. After these 2 races go by, Sega finally remembers that there was supposed to be a story going on just in time for the final course. The camera zooms into this massive coliseum where the finale is taking place, and I guess the entry fee wasn't due until the end of the race. because Sonic and Jet finally present their Chaos Emeralds to the big prize pedestal. And now that I think about it, maybe this final race was the actual tournament Eggman was holding and all these other races were just kind of like supplemental experiences. Or maybe I'm just reading way too much into a kid's game with mediocre writing. Regardless of all that, the race begins. I just want to take a minute to say that up until this point, I pretty much managed to just breeze through the races. They all took me a couple of tries, but once I learned the shortcuts and tricks on each stage, I was able to put it all together and it felt pretty fun and rewarding. Until I reached this level. Sand Runes was the absolute bane of my existence. This track single-handedly slowed down the process of me getting this video out via pure If you don't know every shortcut and safe route, you will never even get close to beating Jet, and you'll constantly just be thrown off the map by the sand falls in the starting section of the track. After about 20 or so tries, I finally managed to beat this damn course, and I got the next cutscene. Remember that bomb Sonic had stuck to his board? Well, he obviously never noticed it for plot reasons, and sure enough, Wave uses it to blow up Sonic's gear, and in the last moment, Jet snags the win. And of course, he gets all the Chaos Emeralds, and then we get another cutscene. Jet pulls out this weird Tesseract treasure thing, and he uses it to somehow focus the Chaos Emeralds and raise this giant floating city out of the ground. The city being Babylon Garden, the long-lost city of which Jet's ancestors created. Eggman, then in his regular fashion, proceeds to steal the cube thingy from Jet and flies off towards Babylon Garden in pursuit of whatever it is that city holds within. And with Jet and Sonic both in tow, they of course need to have some last-minute rivalry, so you get one more race, and this one takes place in Babylon Garden. Babylon Garden is probably one of the most visually interesting tracks, and it's honestly not that bad to race on either. But don't get me wrong, I fell off this course a lot. The turns are all pretty tight, and there's a couple of points where you can easily just run right off the side of the course, but once you figure out the little intricacies to Babylon Garden, it's honestly not that hard of a feat. Once you finally beat Jet for the last time, Sonic finds Eggman and he's holding Amy hostage, which honestly I don't think Sonic could care less. But aside from that, Sonic quickly defeats Eggman by crashing right into him, nearly catching Amy in the collision. Sonic then gives Jet back his fun time party cube and gets chased around by a pissed off Amy until the credits finally roll. And that's the end of the game. Until you get back to the title screen and you see the Babylon story has been unlocked. So let's run it all back. The Babylon story opens with setting up a little more information on Jet and his crew, once again mentioning that they're the last descendants of an ancient race and the only thing left behind was the magic Rubik's Cube.
Was this the key to the fabled Babylon Garden?
I wonder, could it be true? Could our ancestors have left behind hidden treasures that's just waiting to be discovered?
And Jet is just showing it off like normal. Eggman then promptly arrives in Jet's quarters and he provides a better context to the opening we saw in the hero story, as Eggman promptly convinces Jet to steal all the Chaos Emeralds in exchange for finding Babylon Garden.
So let me get this straight. We just need to collect all these Chaos Emeralds, right?
And just before they set out, Eggman warns them of Sonic, which then follows into the first encounter with the Blue Blur in a race.
No way I'm gonna lose.
The biggest change in the Babylon story is that every race takes place in the same locale, but it's an alternate version of the track you would have raced on in the hero story. So in this case, the first race you're on is Night Chase instead of Metal City, but both tracks have visually the same thing going on. Past this point, nothing else really changes. All the races are basically set up the same way, but instead from the perspectives of the Babylon Rogues, and the races all proceed the same. The only major difference is that for some reason, certain races are set up as the Rogues running from Eggman robots, instead of them racing against Sonic and friends like in the hero story. The story progresses as you'd expect. You'd make it to the final race in the desert, Sonic's board gets blown up, they go and race in Babylon Garden, which for some reason you don't play as Jet for the final race. And then it proceeds to the Rogue's perspective of the hero's ending, but this time it doesn't roll to credits.
I lost! So don't play games with me! I don't want your pity, nor do I need it!
What? Are you crazy? If they don't want it, then let's take it. Treasure is treasure. Come on, let's get out of here.
Okay, let's go!
In the Babylon story, the scene continues, and Jet uses the magic block to open up a door to the hidden treasure of Babylon. And when
What?
Sonic catches wind of what's going on, he follows suit and everyone rushes into the secret room before the door shuts. And what do we find in the secret room? A genie. Yep, that's it. A genie.
3D Pool. Those who seek treasure can only.
Whoa, what's this?
And this actually leads into the final race of the entire Sonic Riders story. The final boss fight takes place in a simple oval track, and you have one goal that the game once again doesn't really choose to explain to you. You have to stay in first place long enough each lap in order to smack the urn the genie is in so you can damage his health. Do this 3 times and then take first place, and boom, the story rolls into its final scenes. Upon dying, or whatever this is, the genie leaves behind a chest containing some special treasure, and right before Jet can open it, Eggman finally rears his handsome face, and he is strapped. Eggman uses his guns to intimidate the lads and opens the chest for himself, and in utter confusion he finds a rug.
The treasure of Babylon is finally mine! Huh? What is this thing? A piece of cloth? I went to the trouble of holding the World Grand Prix for this? I can't believe I just wasted my time for this piece of junk!
Eggman is then overcome with copium and tries to rationalize the time he just wasted putting this whole scheme together just for it all to be some carpet with special history. Oh, and it turns out to be a magic carpet.
Oh, it's...
At long last, the final cutscene plays. Jet and Sonic say their goodbyes to each other, promising to meet again at some point to fight over who's truly the fastest creature alive.
You better make sure you're ready when we meet face to face once again. You bet.
Come on, Jet, it's time to split.
I wanted to say that.
We should split too, right?
Yeah.
And then the rogues ride off into the sunset in a fashion that I'm sure ended up in an AMV or two somewhere with Nickelback playing in the background. And that about sums up the whole story of Sonic Riders. After playing through the whole game again, I have to say I was definitely a little blinded by my nostalgia for Sonic Riders, but overall it was still kind of fun. I think what made this game still enjoyable was how much there was to learn and find out just by playing the game. I definitely still had a little muscle memory from when I was younger, but the later, more challenging races definitely helped shake all that rust off. And damn, it was satisfying to finally win each race once I had all the little niches down. If you've played Sonic Riders before, let me know what you think about it down in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you guys have to say about this game. If you're at all interested in the sequel to Sonic Riders, I'm currently in the process of putting together a video for that game as well, so keep an eye out for that. I lastly just wanted to thank you all so much for watching today's video. It means the world to me that I can put these videos together and hopefully bring you guys a smidge of entertainment, and I couldn't be more grateful. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I am out.